and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're using this Inchies Christmas stamp set here to create some beautiful critter, like cute and retro kind of Christmas card. So for the first one here, I'm just taking a square note card, which I've cut, not note card, actually a card panel, which I've cut to 5 inches by 5 inches, and I'm marking at every 1.5 inch, which I'm going to create a grid here, and I want those the grid pattern to be very symmetrical. So I'm just creating those points where I want the lines to join. So all I'm going to do after I'm done adding those dots, I'm just going to join them using my pencil here, and that'll create a perfect square grid. And you will see there would be a hangover of a 1/2 inch on two sides, which we'll take care of towards the end of the card. So now that I've done creating the grid, I'm going to start stamping those inchies into some of those images. So I'm taking all those like the Santa Claus, the penguin, polar bear, snowman, and the reindeer. I'm just going to stamp them using VersaFine Onyx black ink because I plan to use some color pencils for this particular coloring of this card. And I promise you the coloring is extremely simple, no shading, nothing. Just one solid color, and this card comes together so fast and so quick. Of course, as we are approaching closer to Christmas, if you are like me, I'm always in need of Christmas cards towards the end or towards closer to Christmas, and I want the cards to be as simple as possible. And trust me, this is one of those cards that I know I can definitely mass produce, and they definitely look beautiful. The result is stunning. Of course, these cards are not elegant or, the more designer kind. It's more cutesy and more fun kind of cards. So keep that in mind. But of course, the end result, as I said, is going to be beautiful. So now that I've added all the elements, of course, I do need to add some bulbs to that wire that I used from that same stamp set, and I'm just going to place the bulb in every different direction, just making sure I'm filling up that box as well. And you can see I'm just finishing it off as I'm stamping this bulbs in that. Sometimes if it is not stamped very well, all you need to do is just take a black pen and just go over that, and you will be good to go. Now here you can see I'm just finishing off that stamp. These stamps are so easy that you can easily, if you miss a spot, you can just go over it with a pencil. I got some ink there, so I just took a sand eraser and I just went over it to remove that ink spot. Now it's time for coloring. As I told you earlier, it's very simple coloring. I'm just using 4 or 5 different colors here, and I'm not doing any blending or anything here. You can see I'm just going with that white color pencil all over his beard, and I'm going to continue doing that to all the white elements and then keep coloring using that different colors. Now I just want to talk to you a little bit about why this retro idea came in mind. I just was going through the internet, and I was learning or reading about what is the difference between retro and vintage. And what I realized is retro is something that you reproduce or you replicate from a certain era. Vintage is original. That's what it is. It's the construction is always original. It's, if you were to go to a vintage store, you're going to get something that is original. But retro is something that you take a certain era and then you replicate it. So that's what this is. And when I was looking at it, I started looking at pop art, because usually when you think about retro, you think about the 50s and the 60s. And during that time, the 50s and the 60s, the pop art was a very popular kind of art. And as I was scrolling through, I came across Campbell's soup, which is a soup industry that has been in since the 1860s. But in the 1960s, or 1962 precisely, Andy Warhol, who's one of the designers, who's a pop artist, actually redesigned the Campbell's soup can, and he went with that pop art element for that canned soup. And I looked at that canned soup, and it was so impressive. I really loved the story behind the how the Campbell's soup evolved, or the design of the Campbell's soup evolved. And I took away those colors from that particular Campbell's soup can, and that's how this particular color combination came to be. And you can see it's very much just red, whites, and black. And if you look at retro designs, even like if you look at newer designs in the 2000s and 2001s, in the 2020s, people replicate these retro designs, and you can see it's very common to use reds and whites and blacks and a pop of yellows in the retro design. So that's something behind how this card developed. And then once I was done coloring, I'm just adding a few details to some of the scarves, and you can see I just added a plaid detail to the polar bear's scarf, and some polka dots for the penguin scarf, stripes for the snowman, and then I'm also adding some highlight, like just a little white dot, or like a line, just to create that light reflection on it. And once I was done with that, I just added some snowflakes, not really snowflakes, it's more snowballs all over the critters and around the critters. And then I also added some hearts for the sentiment, because I felt the sentiment needed something too. So I just made my own hearts, and then I colored it with red and added some snowdrops there too. And that pretty much finished all the coloring of this card panel. What I'm doing here is I'm just taking a black ink pen, or not, sorry, ink pen, black paint pen, and I'm just drawing in those lines which we drew using our pencil. And then I'm just going to do the same, repeat the same on the other side too. I don't need to draw the last line there, because we are going to cut that. Remember, I told you earlier that 1/2 inch that is there on both edges, I'm going to trim that off. So then it would be a perfect square with the grid in between. You'll see that as soon as I'm done cutting those two edges. Here you go. And you can see it's now 1/2 inch lesser than what it was. And all I'm going to do is going to take a 5x5 white note card, and I'm adhering that panel onto it. And here is the finished look. Now we're moving on to the second card. The second card here, again, I'm going to go with that same retro theme. When you look at retro designs in the newer sense, in the modern sense, they talk about textures, they talk about geometrical shapes, they talk about colors bright, and they also talk about fewer colors, not too many colors, but just choosing a few colors. So what I did here is, for my geometrical element, I just drew in a circle using my pencil and a circle die, and then I'm just going to stamp the elements from the same Inchies stamp set using some black Memento ink, and this time I'm going to use Copic colors. So I'm just going to stamp. So I started off with the largest element, and then I'm going to fill in the remaining parts using the smaller elements. And you can see here, I'm just going quickly because it's just stamping here, and I'm just going to stamp within that circle that I drew using the pencil. Then I'm also taking the snowflake from another stamp set. I think it's called the Snowmen stamp set, and then I'm just going to add that snowflake using a very light aqua color. And then I'm just taking 2 shades here. You can see I'm just taking 2 blue BG colors and 2 R colors. So this one here is BG11, and then I'm going to blend the BG11 with BG10, and that's it. And you can see I'm not even, let me finish this BG11 here. You can see I'm just adding it to the edge, and then I'm taking BG10 and I'm just blending it towards the white, and I'm not even going to the edge, to the other edge of this image. You can see that I'm leaving most of it pretty white. I just wanted some element, some interesting element to the coloring. So it's not really coloring the whole image, it's just adding a little bit of shading to that to that image. And I'm going to do the same thing with all of the elements. I have the pencil mark there, so I want to make sure that I erase there before I start coloring, because I don't want to trap the pencil inside underneath my coloring. When I do these smaller elements, if you notice closely, I am not going to the edge of the black line, but I'm just staying a little inside. It's more visible now when I start doing the red color. So here I'm taking R29 and then I'm going to blend R29 with R24. So you can see here I'm leaving a tiny white edge on each of the stamped elements. I'm just doing that. I'm just going to repeat that, and then I'm going to blend it with R24. And again, as I said, very simple coloring. If you are uncomfortable doing blending, then choose the lighter of the colors and just do one color and you will be fine. It's going to look beautiful. It's just creating some kind of interest. And again, this blending is very simple. Even if you do the two color, it's very simple blending. There's nothing too complicated here. I'm just adding the dark color and then I'm blending it out with the light color, and that's it. And then I'm taking my red pen here and I'm just adding some handmade snowflakes. They're not perfect, and that's what adds to this handmade feel of handmade retro feel. And then I'm taking the blue BG11 Copic marker and I'm adding some diamonds in different sizes. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Again, if you notice, they're not perfect. Perfection is not needed. And then you just add some dots using the same. So all I'm doing is I'm filling up that circle so that when I erase the pencil marks, eventually it'll look like we stamped everything in a circle. So it just kind of adds some interest to the card. And then I'm just taking some black pen here and I'm just going to fill in this black nose and the buttons. And I realize there are some spots that I have missed, and you can see I'm just filling up those spots. And then I'm also going to take the black pen again and I'm going to add some dots. And I'm going to just, before that, I just added some steam to the cup of whatever that is, cocoa, coffee, whatever you like drinking. Anyway, so I'm just going to add some black dots as well. And then I also realized that I did not complete the stem for the tree. And I'm going to come back here in a bit and I'm going to color the tree stem and the snowman's hat using the same red colors. And that pretty much finished up the coloring and stamping part of that little circle that we created. And now all that was left to do was to erase the pencil mark that I had the pencil that I had used to create the circle. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to take a sentiment from the same snowman present stamp set, and I'm going to use the sentiment which says Merry Christmas, and I'm going to stamp this right underneath that circle element using some black Versamark ink, VersaFine ink, and that's pretty much it. And I'm going to adhere this to another square note card, and here is the finished look. How cute is that? Simple and easy, isn't it? Now for the final card here, I'm going to go with the Slimline mini Slimline card, which I've mentioned earlier in one of my previous videos as well. A mini Slimline measures 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. So here I've taken this cardstock which measures a 3 1/4 by 6 1/4, and I have drawn a line 1/2 inch above the edge of the bottom edge of the note card. And I'm taking these two different pine trees which are in that same Inchies stamp set, and I'm going to alternate between the two and stamp them in a line. That pencil line helps me to stamp the trees in a line so they're not crooked, and that's pretty much it. And then I'm just going to color this using two different shades of green. So I'm going to color this solid. Again, no shading here. You can see that I'm just using G19 to color one of the trees and then YG25 to color the second tree. And I'm going to alternate that as well on each of the tree. Again, when I talk about retro, during the 50s and the 60s, green was a very popular color. Green, yellows and reds were really popular colors, and that's why I chose to go with this color tone for this particular card. And then I just the trunk of the tree, I just used E25, and then I just stamped a few stars, not few stars, I stamped one star above every tree, and then I'm going to color that using Y15. You can color the star whatever color you like. You can color the trees in any colors you like. You can do pinks, you can do yellows. Pink trees would look beautiful, pink, and aqua trees would look beautiful. And then I'm going to add some white dots. The white dots for me, I'm thinking popcorns. When you think about the old trees in the 50s, I've seen many cards that people that I on the internet where you can see popcorns on the tree, popcorn garlands on the tree, and that was what the inspiration was to get these white dots. And you can see I went in a zigzag pattern. Then I've taken the scallop slimline die, and I just want to create the scallop edge at the bottom, and I ran it through the die cut machine. Just in the bottom you can see the scalloped edge, and then I'm taking this red stickles here and I'm going to add some baubles, and that pretty much is the tree. So just some red stickles and some popcorns, and I've seen quite a few trees. I mean, if you go through Pinterest and you go through Google or whatever your search engine you use, and you look at retro trees or trees with popcorns or whatever, or trees in the 50s or trees in the 60s, you have tons of ideas that come up. And that's how sometimes I get my inspirations, is just learning and figuring out what were the different styles and how can I incorporate those styles in my card. And here all I'm doing is I'm adding some gold pen on that star just to add some shimmer. And then I'm taking the same stamp set that sentiment that I used previously, and I'm taking this red Memento Luxe ink and I'm stamping it right on the top edge. Then I'm taking this striped window slimline die, and I've gone ahead and die cut that on a white cardstock, and I'm just going to trim away 3 sides. I don't necessarily need this to look like a window because I'm going to use that as a border for this card. So here I'm taking a red cardstock, which is also cut at 3 1/4 by 6 1/4, and I'm going to adhere that. I'm just seeing everything looks fine, and I'm going to adhere that white striped cardstock on the bottom, and that kind of gives you that candy cane, Christmas candy cane look, and that's the reason why I added that element. And then I'm just going to turn it around and snip off excess of that white cardstock, and then all that is left to do is just add this portion to the base. I don't want to add the foam adhesive to the colored cardstock because the stickles were still not dry and I didn't want to smush it. So I just added the foam adhesive to the top of the panel and then adhered this on top. And then all that was left to do was add it to a white mini slimline note card, and that pretty much completed the card. And here you can see the look of that card, and here are the 3 cards that I created and the closer look of the 3 cards that we created. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give us a thumbs up and I will see you next time. Bye bye.